What if I told you that the shampoo you lathered into your hair this morning contains a chemical bond so indestructible it will likely outlive you?
Oh, it's a terrifying thought.
Right. We tend to think of pollution as something outside, like smog over a highway or an oil spill in the ocean. But today, we're looking at the toxic microclimates we're actively building on our own bodies.
It completely reframes how we view daily grooming, you know? We are inadvertently carrying this incredibly persistent chemical load every single day.
Which is why we're pulling from a massive stack of research for you today. So welcome to the deep dive. Pull up a chair because you are the third person at this table today.
We've got a lot to get through.
We really do. We're crossing consumer safety, cosmetic databases,
Mhm.
clinical medical geology reports, environmental science data on forever chemicals, and clinical trichology, which is the study of scalp health.
Yeah, it's a really comprehensive look.
Our mission today is to contrast the alarming, persistent dangers of these synthetic chemicals with the natural, ancient purifying power of clay, and ultimately to give you a roadmap to identify and avoid these harmful substances. So let's get right into the most permeable part of your head.
The scalp is just a fascinating delivery system. I mean, it's a highly porous area of skin with a very dense, rich blood supply.
Oh, wow. So it just absorbs everything.
Exactly. The barrier to entry into your bloodstream is incredibly low right there, which means what you massage into your head, it does not stay on the outside of your body.
And looking at the Environmental Working Group's cosmetic data, the sheer volume of synthetic compounds designed to bypass that barrier is it's staggering.
It really is.
If you look at a standard shampoo bottle, the most deceptive word on the label is simply fragrance or parfum.
Oh, absolutely. The trade secret loopholes.
Yes. Because of those loopholes, the FDA doesn't require companies to disclose what actually makes up a fragrance. A single listed fragrance can be this mystery cocktail hiding dozens of chemicals from a master list of like 3,500 substances.
And the most concerning hidden ingredients in those proprietary blends are phthalates, specifically diethyl phthalate.
Right.
And the industry doesn't use it because it smells good. They use it because it functions as a plasticizer and a gelling agent.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second because I always struggle with that concept. How does a plasticizer function in a liquid hair product?
Well, it alters the physical properties of the liquid. It essentially coats the hair shaft, making the synthetic scent physically stick to the hair longer.
Huh.
Yeah, so it gives the consumer that lingering multi-day illusion of being clean. But the biological cost is severe. I mean, phthalates are notorious endocrine disruptors.
Meaning they mess with your hormones.
Exactly. They interfere with your body's hormonal messaging system, and they are strongly linked to reproductive harm.
So we are trading our hormonal health for the illusion of smelling like a synthetic waterfall.
Pretty much. And it goes beyond fragrance, too. The data highlights parabens, like propylparaben.
Which they use for shelf life, right?
Yeah. So a product can sit in a warehouse for 5 years without growing mold, but once absorbed through the scalp, parabens utilize this lock and key mechanism on our cells.
Oh, that sounds bad.
It is. They have a chemical shape that is similar enough to estrogen that they act like a master key. They lock into cellular receptors and trigger processes that just shouldn't be active. It throws the entire endocrine system into chaos.
Because the industrial utility is always prioritized over human biology.
Always. Take cocamidea, for example. It's a chemically modified form of coconut oil used as a lathering agent.
Because we all love that dense, heavy foam.
Right, we've been conditioned to believe that foam equals cleanliness, so manufacturers add cocamidea to create that sudsy effect. Yet the state of California flags it as a known cancer risk.
Unbelievable.
Or consider lilial. It's the synthetic compound used to mimic the scent of fresh lilies. It has actually been banned in Europe because of its direct links to fertility risks and fetal development issues.
And in Europe, but we're still sudsing up with it here. And if the baseline shampoos are this chemically loaded, the data on artificial hair integrations, like wigs, weaves, and extensions, I mean, it takes the toxicity to a completely different level.
Oh, the artificial hair data is wild.
I was reading the clinical observations from ToxiTress, which is a detox system for protective styles, and the materials used in luxury extensions are terrifying. Synthetic fibers like Canacolon or Futura aren't just benign plastics. They are monocrylic copolymers containing vinyl chloride.
And vinyl chloride is a potent flame retardant.
Which begs the question, Why do we need flame retardants in hair extensions?
Well, it comes down to the physical limitations of the synthetic polymers. Because they are essentially spun plastics, they melt and ignite very easily when exposed to friction or heat from styling tools.
Oh, so a flat iron would just melt them to your head?
Exactly. Or they'd literally catch fire. So to prevent a catastrophic fire hazard on someone's head, the manufacturers lace the fibers with vinyl chloride. The trade-off for not catching fire is chronic exposure to a heavy synthetic toxin that deposits directly onto the scalp.
So it's basically like wearing a chemical sponge on your head.
That's a very accurate way to put it.
And the ToxiTress data notes that along with the vinyl chloride, these fibers and the industrial adhesives used to install them, they deposit heavy metals like lead and massive amounts of formaldehyde.
Yeah.
And this isn't just sitting on a flat surface either. Milk and honey trichologists observed that these extensions create a literal microclimate on the scalp.
Right, and that microclimate is the perfect storm for scalp degradation.
Mm-hmm.
When you install wefts, tracks, or tight braids, you are blocking natural airflow.
So everything just gets trapped.
Everything. The hair traps sweat, sebum from the sebaceous glands, dead skin cells, and bacteria feed on that trapped environment and secrete a protective matrix called a biofilm.
It's essentially a microscopic bacterial fortress built right on top of the hair follicles.
A fortress that traditional shampoos cannot penetrate. And your immune system recognizes this trapped bacterial load, plus the synthetic chemical runoff from the extensions, and it responds with chronic inflammation.
Which leads to real problems.
Severe problems. Over time, this severe follicle congestion leads to a musty odor, severe irritation, and traction alopecia.
And the medical reports get even darker there. Because if that inflammation goes unchecked, it triggers centrifugal cicatricial alopecia, or CCCA.
Right, the scarring hair loss.
Exactly. That's not just hair thinning. The body's immune response gets so aggressive that it attacks its own hair follicles. It completely destroys them and replaces the healthy tissue with tough, permanent scar tissue. Once that scarring happens, the hair is gone forever.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at the catalyst for all of this chemical runoff. When you apply heat to these synthetic integrations, whether from a flat iron, a blow dryer, or honestly just the sustained heat of a heavy workout, those monocrylic copolymers begin to physically degrade.
So the heat actually breaks down the chemical structure of the fibers and the glues?
Yes, turning those solid plastics into volatile compounds that leach right into that highly permeable vascularized scalp. We are engineering synthetic polymers to resist heat, which ultimately causes them to release toxins.
That industrial pursuit of heat resistance feels dangerously close to the underlying chemistry of forever chemicals.
It is the exact same paradigm of synthetic engineering, just taken to its absolute existential extreme. We are talking about PFAS, per, and polyfluoroalkyl substances. If the chemicals we've discussed so far are a daily biological annoyance, PFAS are a permanent global crisis.
I am looking at the environmental science data here, and the sheer persistence of these compounds is terrifying. PFAS were invented in the 1930s to resist heat, oil, stains, grease, and water.
Right, the miracle chemical.
We know them best from Teflon frying pans, waterproof jackets, firefighting foam. But why are they so indestructible? Like, what is the mechanism?
The entire crisis hinges on a single microscopic feature, the carbon-fluorine bond.
Okay.
Fluorine is a highly electronegative element, meaning it pulls electrons toward itself with immense force. When it bonds with carbon, they share those electrons so tightly that it creates an armor-plated molecule. It is one of the strongest bonds in organic chemistry.
So PFAS are basically the ultimate unwelcome house guests who change the locks, eat all your food, and refuse to ever leave.
Yes, that is exactly what they do.
So when our liver enzymes, which are normally great at chopping up and filtering out natural toxins, try to process a PFAS molecule, they essentially just break their teeth on that carbon-fluorine armor.
That is the mechanical reality. They do not break down in nature, and they do not break down in us, which leads to severe occupational hazards for the people working closely with these compounds.
Right, like firefighters.
Yeah, firefighters face massive exposure from the specific heavy-duty foams they use to smother chemical fires. But the source material highlights a completely unexpected group facing massive exposure too: professional ski wax technicians.
I couldn't believe that when I read it. We associate skiing with pristine alpine air. How are ski technicians facing the highest total PFAS air concentrations of any reported occupational exposure?
It comes back to heat and volatility. The glide wax used to coat the bottom of professional skis is heavily laden with PFAS to drastically reduce friction against the snow. It's applied as a solid block, But to get it to bind to the ski, technicians use hot irons to melt it.
Ah, so heating the wax vaporizes the PFAS, turning a solid surface coating into an inhalable gas.
An inhaled vapor crosses the lung-blood barrier almost instantly. The technicians are trapped in these unventilated waxing tents, just inhaling vaporized forever chemicals, but the problem doesn't stay in those tents.
No, it spreads.
The environmental data illustrates a terrifying cascade once these chemicals enter the ecosystem, drawing a critical distinction between bioaccumulation and biomagnification.
Okay, let's break down that mechanism. Bioaccumulation happens inside a single organism, right? You drink contaminated water or absorb PFAS through your cosmetics, and because your body can't crack that carbon-fluorine bond, it stores the chemical in your liver and blood.
And it stays there for an alarming amount of time. In humans, the half-life of some PFAS is over 8 years.
Wait, really? Meaning if I completely isolate myself from all PFAS today, it will take 8 years for my liver to clear just half of the toxic load I'm currently carrying.
Exactly. Which is an impossible scenario because we are constantly re-exposed. Now, take that individual bioaccumulation and apply it across an entire food web. That is biomagnification.
Of the stacks.
Right. A tiny organism absorbs a microscopic amount of PFAS from the water. A small fish eats hundreds of those organisms, compounding the dose. A larger fish eats dozens of the small fish. By the time you reach the top of the food chain, the concentration of the toxin has magnified exponentially.
The marine data is staggering. The concentration of PFAS in marine biota can be 5,000 times greater than the water they swim in. And this creates what the environmental scientists describe as toxic delivery systems.
Oh, the migratory birds?
Yes. Migrating seabirds feed heavily on this contaminated marine life in industrialized southern waters. Then, they fly thousands of miles to remote, pristine regions like the Arctic to nest.
When they arrive, they become prey for Arctic predators, or they just excrete the chemicals into the snowpack.
They are literally airdropping indestructible forever chemicals into ecosystems that have never seen a factory or a frying pan.
It's wild, and the systemic health impacts of this global saturation are profound. Because these chemicals bioaccumulate in the blood and organs, medical data strongly links PFAS exposure to ulcerative colitis, which is where the lining of the colon becomes chronically inflamed and ulcerated.
Wow.
It's also linked to severe thyroid disease, elevated cholesterol, and multiple types of cancer. We are even tracking a decreased response to vaccines in children.
Because the children's immune systems are already so burdened fighting off the chemical load, they can't mount a proper antibody response to the vaccine.
The biological toll is massive, and the global cleanup cost for this contamination is currently estimated in the trillions of dollars.
So we are swimming in a sea of positively charged, indestructible lab chemicals. They are raining down on the Arctic, they are in our bloodstreams, and they are trapped in the synthetic microclimates on our scalps. It is an incredibly bleak picture.
Very bleak.
But the sources point to a radically different, naturally occurring mechanism to pull these toxins out. We don't need a more advanced lab chemical. We need geology, specifically bentonite and calcium bentonite clay.
It is the ultimate contrast. We are fighting the most stubborn, highly engineered synthetic compounds with ancient volcanic ash.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, montmorillonite, which is the primary mineral in bentonite clay, is rich in silica, calcium, and magnesium. But its real power isn't just nutritional, it's electrical.
Wait, so we're fighting highly advanced, indestructible lab chemicals with dirt. How does mud do what high-tech clarifying shampoos can't? This is where the physics of it just blew my mind. Calcium bentonite clay possesses a uniquely high cation exchange capacity, or CEC.
Let's unpack the mechanics of that. The molecular structure of volcanic ash is essentially missing positive ions, which gives the clay a very strong net negative ionic charge.
Okay.
Now, consider the synthetic load we've been discussing. Heavy metals like lead, the vinyl chloride residue from extensions, the stubborn chemical buildup from shampoos. Almost all of these carry a positive ionic charge.
Opposites attract.
On a molecular level, yes. When you hydrate the clay, it activates that electrical charge. You apply it to the scalp, and it physically acts like a magnet. The negative charge of the clay forcefully draws out the positively charged toxins from deep within the pores and hair follicle.
That is incredible.
And as it pulls the toxins in, it binds them to its own structural matrix and simultaneously releases its beneficial minerals into the skin.
That process-active chelation completely redefines what it means to wash your hair. Standard clarifying shampoos, even the ultra-expensive salon brands, rely on harsh chemical surfactants. They don't have an ionic pull.
Not at all.
They are just using aggressive detergents to scrub the surface, stripping away the scalp's natural moisture barrier along with the dirt. Or worse, they leave behind a film of silicones to make the stripped hair feel soft. They aren't doing anything to molecularly unbind the heavy metals.
And the clinical data from milk and honey trichologists makes that difference undeniably clear. Their studies found that professional chelating treatments utilizing this active clay matrix remove up to 95% of mineral and chemical buildup from the scalp.
95%.
Yeah, if you compare that to a popular DIY remedy like just pouring apple cider vinegar over the hair, the vinegar only removes about 40 to 50% of the buildup. It just lacks the electrical capacity to pull the heavy metals.
And leveraging geology like this isn't a new wellness trend. The medical geology reports trace this back centuries. Early humans instinctively practiced geophagy, the actual consumption of specific clays to treat digestive issues and poisonings.
Right. Today, the agricultural sector relies heavily on bentonite to bind and neutralize aflatoxins, which are these highly lethal fungal toxins that contaminate livestock feed.
Environmental engineers even deploy it on a massive scale to clean up toxic oil spills because of its incredible binding capacity.
And yet, we are just now widely realizing its potential for that toxic microclimate on our heads. The ToxiTress protocol specifically targets people wearing protective styles, braids, locks, weaves.
Right, because you can't really wash those normally.
Exactly. If you try to wash tightly woven braids with traditional shampoo, you have to scrub aggressively to get the suds in and out. That friction loosens the style, creates frizz, and basically ruins the expensive installation.
But the mechanics of the clay bypass the need for friction entirely. The ToxiTress method combines the negatively charged bentonite clay with activated charcoal. You hydrate it into a smooth paste and apply it directly down the braids and onto the scalp.
The charcoal acts as a sponge for surface oils, while the activated clay acts as the magnet. You don't scrub, you just let it sit there.
The physical laws of ionic contraction do all the heavy lifting, actively pulling the lead, the phthalates, and the formaldehyde out of the synthetic fibers and up from the congested follicles.
You rinse it away, the chemical load goes down the drain, and the physical integrity of the protective style remains perfectly intact.
But active chelation is only half the battle, right? Detoxing a heavy chemical burden is vital, but breaking the cycle of exposure requires a fundamental shift in how we approach our personal care routines.
This raises an important question about true cleanliness. It isn't about artificial suds or synthetic floral scents. It's about maintaining a healthy microbiome and consciously reducing your chemical load. We have to stop volunteering for it.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, the next time you're standing in the hair care aisle? You need a practical roadmap to navigate these hazards. The absolute biggest red flag is the word fragrance or parfum. If the specific ingredients aren't listed, you must assume it is masking endocrine-disrupting phthalates.
You also need to scan the label for the specific estrogen mimics. Look for products explicitly marked paraben-free to avoid compounds like propylparaben. Check for cocamide day to avoid carcinogenic lathering agents, and ensure Lilial isn't hiding in the ingredients list.
For those utilizing hair extensions, the roadmap requires much more vigilance. You have to verify the manufacturing source of the hair. If a brand of synthetic fibers refuses to disclose their chemical processing, just leave it on the shelf.
Absolutely. You have to avoid toxic, heavy-duty glues, which are the primary culprits behind severe contact dermatitis and the follicle scarring we talked about. And it sounds basic, but always, always do a patch test before a full installation to gauge your immune system's localized response.
Finally, we have to rethink the physical maintenance of the scalp by implementing a routine detox. You cannot just wash the hair shaft. You must aggressively target the biofilm on the skin. Exfoliating the scalp physically breaks down that bacterial fortress.
And if you want to harness the magnetic pull of clay at home, the formulation of a DIY mask has to be highly precise.
Right, you can't just mix dirt and water and hope for the best.
Exactly. The science requires specific ratios. You mix 1 part calcium bentonite clay with 1 part warm water. The water must be warm to fully hydrate the mineral matrix and activate that negative electrical charge. But you cannot apply that directly to your head. You must add half part of apple cider vinegar.
I was wondering about that. If the clay is doing all the heavy lifting with its ionic pull, why do we need the vinegar?
It's a critical issue of pH balance. Bentonite clay is highly alkaline. Your scalp, however, maintains a delicate, slightly acidic environment known as the acid mantle. This acidic barrier is your body's natural defense against harmful bacteria and yeast. If you apply a highly alkaline clay directly to the scalp, you will blow out that natural defense barrier. The apple cider vinegar safely neutralizes the high alkalinity of the clay.
So you get the electrical, magnetic, detoxifying power of the clay without destroying your biological acid mantle in the process. You mix that balanced paste, apply it from root to tip, let the physics work for 5 to 10 minutes, and rinse.
It's about respecting biological harmony. For the last century, human engineering has focused on creating compounds that outlast us. Chemicals that resist heat, resist water, and resist decay.
Yeah.
The persistence of PFAS and the synthetic traps we wear on our bodies are testaments to that engineering. But they fundamentally fail to account for the biological price we pay when those indestructible chemicals accumulate inside our cells.
The contrast couldn't be sharper. Against the crushing synthetic burden of forever chemicals, we have the elegant, magnetic simplicity of volcanic ash. The most advanced, highly effective chelating agent we have wasn't engineered in a laboratory. It was forged by the earth millions of years ago.
We spent decades trying to outsmart nature, only to realize the antidote to our synthetic poisons was literally beneath our feet the entire time.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to ponder. If ancient civilizations instinctively knew that volcanic ash could heal and draw out toxins centuries before we had electron microscopes to identify negative ionic charges or cationic exchange capacities, what other brilliant, perfectly engineered natural remedies are sitting unrecognized in the dirt? What else is just waiting out there to solve the synthetic chemical disasters we've created in the last century? The next time you step into the shower or sit in a salon chair, you get to decide what kind of microclimate you're building. You can carry an invisible, heavy burden of forever chemicals, or you can utilize the earth to pull them away.